Consider a bullet fired from a gun, coming straight towards your head. Can you just pluck the bullet out of the air with your fingers? I want to know if that's physically possible. Like, can you stop a bullet with your fingers without any superpower? Most people think it's completely impossible, but that's not true, and I'll prove it to you in a few. But first, let's talk about the reasons it feels impossible to stop a fired bullet with fingers. Okay, the most obvious one is speed. A standard 9mm bullet leaves the gun at about 370 meters per second. That's over 1,300 feet per second, and a rifle round is even worse, with some pushing 900 meters per second. Now, the fastest human hand movement ever recorded, and people have actually studied this, is somewhere around 10 to 15 meters per second. That's like a really committed slap. So we're talking about a bullet moving anywhere from 20 to 180 times faster than the fastest your hand can physically move. But here's the part that gets me. Even if your hand could move fast enough, your brain can't. Human reaction time to a visual stimulus is roughly 150 to 250 milliseconds. In that window, a 9mm bullet has already traveled up to 90 meters. So by the time your nervous system has even registered that a gun went off, the bullet has crossed the length of a football field. And all that is totally normal. But let's say we ignore all of that and a bullet does connect with your hand. What happens? It's not pretty. A 9mm round carries about 548 joules of kinetic energy. For context, that's enough to penetrate 30 centimeters of human tissue. Your finger bones aren't going to slow it down. They're going to shatter. And it's not just the direct impact. There's something called hydrostatic shock. The pressure wave from a bullet damages tissue that it never even touches. Your hand would be destroyed in a radius well beyond where the bullet passed through. Oh, and the bullet itself? It exits the barrel at somewhere between 200 and 300 degrees Celsius. If you somehow manage to touch it, you'd have a severe burn on top of everything else. Globally, this is not a good plan. But here's where I actually want to spend some time, because this is the part that surprised me. Are there any conditions, real physical conditions, where catching a bullet becomes less suicidally impossible? And the answer is kind of yes. Scenario 1, extreme range. Bullets slow down a lot. Aerodynamic drag is relentless. A .22 LR bullet fired at its maximum range, around 1,500 meters away, can decelerate to somewhere around 40 to 60 meters per second by the time it arrives. That's starting to approach the speed of a hard baseball pitch. At that speed, the kinetic energy has dropped from over 100 joules down to maybe 5 to 8 joules. That's roughly the force of a firm punch. With a thick padded glove, not bare fingers but protection, you're entering the territory of physically conceivable. The bullet is still hot, still spinning at something like 150,000 revolutions per minute from the rifling, but the energy is manageable. Scenario 2, underwater. Water is brutal to bullets. A 9mm round fired into water essentially stops within 1 to 3 meters. At 2.5 meters of depth, a bullet might be moving at less than 10 meters per second, with almost no energy left. A hand at that distance from the entry point, you could theoretically be in contact with it without dying. The catch, no pun intended, is that you still can't react fast enough to intentionally position your hand there. The physics works, the human nervous system doesn't. Scenario 3. It went straight up. If someone fires a gun straight into the air, that bullet comes back down at terminal velocity. For a tumbling bullet, that's around 90 to 100 meters per second. Still genuinely dangerous, I want to be clear about that, but it's about 93% less energy than it left the muzzle with. This is not safe, but it is a completely different category of threat than catching it fresh out of the barrel. Quick detour, because I know some of you are thinking about magic shows. Catching bullets is a classic stage illusion and a historically deadly one. Something like 12 performers have died attempting variations of it. The ones who survived weren't catching real bullets. They were doing things like loading wax bullets, hiding a preloaded fake in their mouth, or using a separate staged projectile that the audience never sees enter the barrel. The trick isn't physics, it's theater. So here's where we land. Can a human catch a bullet with their bare fingers?
No! No! No!
Not under any realistic conditions. But the more interesting answer is this. In very specific circumstances, the physics of the bullet itself gets manageable. The bullet becomes catchable in a theoretical sense. The gap isn't really between your hand and the bullet, it's between your nervous system and the universe, which is kind of humbling, honestly. Alright, if you want to see more of this kind of breakdown,